We thank you, O Savior, for this time of Torah study, Abba Yahuwah. We thank you for our ears are going to hear, O Savior. We thank you for your instruction on our lives, Abba Yahuwah. I thank you that we take them to heart, Abba Yahuwah, with everything that we receive, O Savior, from you, Abba Yahuwah, tomorrow around. I thank you, O Savior, that it's the word, Yahuwah, to help us to advance, Abba Yahuwah, in our life, O Savior. And I thank you, O Savior, for allowing us to continue to see your mercy, Abba Yahuwah. I thank you for obedience, Abba Yahuwah. That is the highest form of worship. I thank you, O Savior, that we worship you in spirit and truth, Abba Yahuwah. With our lives out, Abba Yahuwah, offering ourselves as a living sacrifice, O Savior. And what you're doing in us and through us, Abba Yahuwah. I thank you, O Savior, that as we live our lives, they will be acceptable before you, O Savior. And I thank you that we take it full-heartedly, Abba Yahuwah, our dedication, O Savior, and our care for your word, O Savior, for the Torah, Abba Yahuwah, and for the instructions for our lives, Abba Yahuwah. And I thank you, O Savior, that we not take it for granted, O Savior. We not take for granted your word, O Savior. We not take for granted, Abba Yahuwah, everything, your statutes, Abba Yahuwah, your commandments, and your righteous ruling and your righteous judgment, Abba Yahuwah. And I thank you, Abba Yahuwah, for what you're doing in our lives, Abba Yahuwah. Even as we get ready to sing a song, Abba Yahuwah, and offer up the fruit of our lips through song, we ask that our words, Abba Yahuwah, and our songs be acceptable, Abba Yahuwah, unto you. We not do it out of religion, Abba Yahuwah, but we do it, Abba Yahuwah, from a sincere heart, O Savior. Truly having a heart, Abba Yahuwah, and a mind to serve you, Abba Yahuwah, with everything in us, Abba Yahuwah. And we just thank you and praise you, O Savior, for what you're doing. We thank you, Abba Yahuwah, for the word that's going to come forth on tonight, O Savior. Thank you for those that will come in and listen, O Savior. I thank you for the instructions, Abba Yahuwah, for their lives, Abba Yahuwah, being, Abba Yahuwah, exactly what they need, O Savior, in the right time, Abba Yahuwah. And I thank you for those, Abba Yahuwah, that will listen to the word. I thank you that they'll cherish it, Abba Yahuwah. I thank you, O Savior, that they'll listen, Abba Yahuwah, and have an open mind, Abba Yahuwah, and open ears to hear your word, O Savior, your Torah, your instructions for our lives, the foundation in which we live upon, O Savior. And I thank you for what you're doing, O Savior. I thank you, O Savior, that we not just fall from the surface of our hearts, Abba Yahuwah, but I thank you that we hide the word in our hearts and we may not sin against it, Abba Yahuwah. And I thank you, O Savior, that it's continually in remembrance, Abba Yahuwah, and that we keep a repentant heart, Abba Yahuwah. We keep a Abba Yahuwah, a thank you on our lips. We keep a Abba Yahuwah, a prayer on our minds, Abba Yahuwah. And I thank you, O Savior, that we not allow the enemy to let us stray from you, Abba Yahuwah. I thank you, O Savior, that you guard our eyes, Abba Yahuwah, guard our ears, O Savior, guard our hearts, Abba Yahuwah. And I thank you, O Savior, for those, Abba Yahuwah, that are in truth, Abba Yahuwah, that may be struggling, Abba Yahuwah. I thank you, O Savior, for you are our solid foundation. I thank you, and our foundation is the word. I thank you that we meditate on the word day and night, Abba Yahuwah. And I thank you, O Savior, that we see our ancestors and our forefathers as examples, Abba Yahuwah, in the word, O Savior. And I thank you that those testimonies, and I thank you that their lifestyles, Abba Yahuwah, help strengthen us, Abba Yahuwah, in this walk, Abba Yahuwah. And I thank you, O Savior, for what you're doing, what you've done, and what you're going to do. As we get ready to sing a song before you, we thank you, O Savior, that our lives will be acceptable, O Savior. We thank you, Abba Yahuwah, that as you see us, you see your children, Abba Yahuwah, living for you, O Savior, in obedience, Abba Yahuwah. And we thank you, O Savior, for what you're doing, what you've done, what you're going to do. In Yahushua, our Mashiach's name, we do pray, and it is so. And it is so. As we put the hands together as the my King, praise team comes forward. It is so. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Yahuwah, we praise you. we magnify you. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we magnify you. And Baruch you Kodesh name. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. High in all the earth. Yahuwah, we praise you. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we magnify you. And Baruch you Kodesh name. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. High in all the earth. Yahuwah, we praise you. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we magnify you. And Baruch you Kodesh name. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. High in all the earth. Yahuwah, we praise you. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we magnify you. And Baruch you Kodesh name. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. High in all the Yahuwah, we praise you. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we magnify you. And Baruch you Kodesh name. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. High in all the earth. Yahuwah, we praise you. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Baruch you Kodesh name. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. High in all the earth. Yahuwah, we praise you. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Baruch you Kodesh name. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. High in all the earth. Yahuwah, we praise you. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we magnify you and Baruch your golden name. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. High in all the earth. Yahuwah, we praise you. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we magnify you and Baruch your golden name. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. High in all the earth. Yahuwah, we praise you. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we magnify you and Baruch your golden name. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. High in all the earth. Yahuwah, we praise you. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we magnify you and Baruch your golden name. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. High in all the You make me happy, you make me whole, you take the pain away, I'm so in love with you. You make me happy, you make me whole, you take the pain away, I'm so in love with you. You make me happy, you make me whole, you take the pain away, I'm so in love with you. You make me happy, you make me whole, you take the pain away, I'm so in love with you. You make me happy, you make me whole, you take the pain away, I'm so in love with you. You make me happy, you make me whole, you take the pain away, I'm so in love with you. Everything about you is right. It covers all my wrongs. Your life saved my life. With you is where I belong. I belong to you. I belong to you. You make me happy. You make me whole. You take the pain away. I'm so in love with you. You make me happy. You make me whole. You take the pain away. I'm so in love with you. You make me happy. You make me whole. You take the pain away. I'm so in love with you. You make me happy. You make me whole. You take the pain away. I'm so in love with you. Everything about you is right. It covers all my wrongs. Your life saved my life. With you, everywhere I belong to you. I belong to you. I'm so in love with you. I can't make it without you. I live to love you. Forever me and you. I'm so in love with you. I can't make it without you. I live to worship you. Forever me and you. I'm so in love with you. I can't make it without you. I live to worship you. Forever me and you. I'm so in love with you. I can't make it without you. I live to worship you. Forever me and you. I'm so in love with you. I can't make it without you. I live to worship you. Forever me and 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 you. Everything about you is right. Hallelujah, 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 believe I'll testify while I have a chance. Believe I'll testify while I have a chance. Believe I'll testify while I have a chance. 'Cause I may not have this chance anymore. Testify, believe I'll testify while I have a chance. Believe I'll testify while I have a chance. Believe I'll testify while I have a chance. 'Cause I don't have this chance anymore. Study the Torah, believe I'll study the Torah while I have have a chance. Believe I'll study the Torah while I have a chance. Believe I'll study the Torah while I have a chance. 'Cause I may not have this chance anymore. Study the Torah. Believe I'll study the Torah while I have a chance. Believe I'll study the Torah while I have a chance. Believe I'll study the Torah while I have a chance. 'Cause I don't have this chance anymore. Clap my hands. Believe I'll clap my hands while I have a chance. Believe I'll clap my hands while I have a chance. Believe I'll clap my hands while I have a chance. 'Cause I may not have this chance anymore. Clap my hands. Believe I'll clap my hands while I have a chance. Believe I'll clap my hands while I have a chance. Believe I'll clap my hands while I have a chance. 'Cause I may not have this chance anymore. Lift my hands. Believe I'll clap my hands while I have a chance. Believe I'll lift my hands while I have a chance. Believe I'll do my dance while I have a chance. 'Cause I may not have this chance anymore. Do my dance. Believe I'll do my dance while I have a chance. Believe I'll do my dance while I have a chance. Believe I'll do my dance while I have a chance. 'Cause I may not have this chance anymore. Run on, believe I'll run on while I have a chance. Believe I'll run on while I have a chance. Believe I'll run on while I have a chance. 'Cause I may not have this chance anymore. Run on, believe I'll run on while I have a chance. Believe I'll run on while I have a chance. Believe I'll run on while I have a chance. 'Cause I may not have this 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 chance anymore. Testify, believe I'll testify while I have a chance. Believe I'll testify while I have a chance. Believe I'll testify while I have a chance. 'Cause I may not have this chance anymore. Love my neighbor, believe I'll love my neighbor while I have a chance. Believe I'll love my neighbor while I have a chance. Believe I'll love my neighbor while I have a chance. 'Cause I may not have this chance anymore. Love my neighbor, believe I'll love my neighbor while I have a chance. Believe I'll love my neighbor while I have a chance. Believe I'll love my neighbor while I have a chance. 'Cause I may not have this chance anymore. Shout, shout, believe I'll shout, shout while I have a chance. Believe I'll shout, shout while I have a chance. Believe I'll shout, shout while I have a chance. 'Cause I may not have this chance anymore. Shout, shout, believe I'll shout, shout while I have a chance. Believe I'll shout, shout while I have a chance. Believe I'll shout, shout while I have a chance. 'Cause I may not have this chance this chance, 'cause I don't have 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 this chance anymore. Testify, believe I'll testify. What I have chance, believe I'll testify. What I have a chance, believe I'll testify. While I have a chance, 'cause I may not have this chance anymore. Testify, believe I'll testify. While I have a chance, believe I'll testify. While I have a chance, believe I'll testify. While I have a chance, 'cause I don't have this chance anymore. Study the Torah, believe I'll study the Torah. While I have a chance, believe I'll study the Torah. While I have a chance, believe I'll study the Torah. While I have a chance, 'cause I may not have this chance anymore. Study the Torah, believe I'll study the Torah. While I have a chance, believe I'll study the Torah. While I have a chance, believe I'll study the Torah. While I have a chance, 'cause I don't have this 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 chance anymore. Testify, believe I'll testify. While I have a chance, believe I'll testify. While I have a chance, believe I'll testify. While I have a chance, 'cause I don't have this chance anymore. Testify, believe I'll testify. While I have a chance, believe I'll testify. While I have a chance, believe I'll testify. While I have a chance, 'cause I don't have this chance anymore.
Hallelujah. It is now time for our declaration. A time when we go to worship in the atmosphere. The first voices to hear will be a portion of the praise team, and I will immediately follow to take us into a time of declaration.
Listen here, have you ever heard his name? I know he wants to be clean. Why is wrong with you? And salvation there, you know you will be clean. You
As we enter this time of revolution, I ask everyone to repeat after me, say, I declare that the Torah is the guide for my life. Therefore, I shall adhere to and apply the principles and teaching of the Torah to my life. Therefore, as I walk in obedience, my arm will prove me mightily. Satan defeated, your darkness is scattered, and your vision is solid. Power of victorious magnified in Christ's name. Because my arm is also who is truly awesome. He is really truly awesome. Hallelujah. We magnify him all the way to the God. We magnify him for how he has set us on the to magnify and look good till we honor him and esteem him, because it is now time for us to receive us to our King. And as we receive us to our King, we need to according to his set apart will. But the request in the way of Jesus that as long as the earth remains, there remains same time and harvest. Who sits there and says that when we give, it shall be given unto us good measure. Press down, shake it up, and whatever and shall it cause men to give into our bosoms. For with the same measure that we meet now, it shall be measured unto us again. Our because say that he knows which are forgiven. He is seed to the soil. Therefore our food he multiplies our seed sown, and increases the fruits of our life steadily. That we may abound with every good work. Hallelujah to the soul. And the word of Amos comes from soul to let us know that the time is going now is where people shall overtake the soil. So as we come begin to sow our seed, we know and understand. That not only is the seed time, but what time is it? What time is it? I'll say that way. What time is it? It is the truth of the Lord's time. Okay? So what most of us that are here present and give you the time around the revolution head, and I also will be willing that they get one to you. To those of you that are here remotely by way of internet radio, CD, however may be, being a participant in this outreach into this broadcast. If you desire to sow seed into good ground, and you know that this is good ground, then please feel free if you desire to use snail mail to send your donations of love and support that we may continue to move forward in this work to PO Box 381, Columbia, South Carolina 29202. That's PO Box 381, Columbia, South Carolina 29202. If you desire to use PayPal, send us your information and we will correspond accordingly to send you the amount. Also, if you're doing it by way of ministry employees, I get the lead with the donate button at the instruction. And we thank those of you that are continuing supporters of this work. Thank you. We really appreciate you for all that you do. Because you partake in the outreach that goes forth and the souls that reach all throughout the world. Hallelujah. Because people are being reached all over the world. So we do magnify the King. We thank you for all that you have done, all that you have done, and all that you have done. Again, we thank you. We thank you. opportunity for us to bring our seed unto our King. And as we give in total belief, knowing that our Lord will magnify and He will esteem and He will bring His set apart in His word to pass. And it is so. So as a musician, we will the seed unto our King. Unto our King. Hallelujah. Lord, we do thank you, we do magnify and esteem you at the highest. We love you, Lord, for all that you've done. We thank you for all that you're doing and all that you're yet going to do in our lives. For our expectation, our trust, and our belief is in you. We thank you, Lord, for you tell us in your center that if we're willing and obedient, that we shall eat the good of this land. We do thank you, Lord, because we are givers, because we do self in our giving, and our giving is an act of our poverty. We thank you that we are receivers and that we are partakers of the good of this land. We thank you for everyone that is sown seed. We thank you for every seed that is in those that are preparing to send seed. Hallelujah. We thank you, Lord, for even moving them even now in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach, and it is so. And it is so. Let's give it praise. Let's praise and lift him up because he is through the word of the highest esteem. Hallelujah. We truly love our hallelujah for all that he has done and for how he yet continues to keep us, how he yet continues to lift us up. The scripture says that he is the lifter of our head, the lover of our souls. Hallelujah. And we truly thank you for all that he has done. And again, we also thank you for giving us his word, for giving us his Torah. We thank him really because it is a Torah that allows us to know how we are to walk in right standing, in righteousness, in uprightness. Hallelujah. And we thank you for his son, Yahushua HaMashiach, that came to show us and let us know that nothing can do. But he also came to empower us that we might be able to walk this walk and not just simply talk the talk. Hallelujah. And it is so. And it is so. So without further ado, it gives me a tremendous honor to bring to your forefront one who is a right now ready warrior, not a weekend warrior, but a daily warrior. One who really is in what many would like to call the art of war. Hallelujah. Spiritual warfare, into God, is a apartment and a sacred writings. Seeking the letters that may be an honor to the people, and to us Israel, that we might better be able to stand, and be all that our Lord would have us to be. Hallelujah. And so we do thank you for truly giving us a true gift and a true star of war. One who walks in the highest esteem and the highest level of intelligence. Hallelujah. So without further ado, I'm thankful to thank you who has truly these 22 years. Hallelujah. And I'm thankful for you and all that you're supposed to do. So you continue to give us any more time. Hallelujah. So the wise here. And I see you, my Lord. I very much power. So we stop. Put our hands
The Baruch one. Baruch is Yahuwah, the Baruch one. For all eternity. Baruch atah, Yahuwah, our supreme one. King of the universe, who selected us from all the peoples, and gave us his Torah. Baruch atah, Yahuwah, giver of the Torah, and it is so. Baruch atah, Yahuwah, our supreme one, King of the universe, who gave us the Torah of truth, and implanted eternal life within us. Baruch atah, Yahuwah, giver of the Torah, and it is so. And it is so. Now we're going to read the commandments.
I am who your power was brought you out of the land of Misri from the bed of slavery. That you shall have no other power before me. You shall not make you any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in Shemayim above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the main beneath the earth. You shall not bow down yourself unto them nor serve them, for I, Yahuwah, your power, am a jealous power, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Amen. You shall not take the name of Yahuwah your power and falsify it, for Yahuwah will not hold him guiltless that takes his name and empties it. Now guard the Sabbath day to set it apart, as Yahuwah your power has commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of Yahuwah your power. In it you shall not do any work. You, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your ox, nor your ass, nor your cow, nor your poor that is within your gates, that your manservant and your maidservant may rest as well as you. And remember that you were a servant in the land of Israel, and that Yahuwah your power brought you out of there through a mighty hand, and by a stretched out arm. Therefore Yahuwah your power commanded you to keep the Sabbath day. Hey, honor your father and your mother, Yahuwah your power has commanded you, that days may be prolonged and that we will be with you in the land Yahuwah your power is about to give you. Vav, you shall not murder. Zan, neither shall you commit adultery. Ket, neither shall you steal. Tet, neither shall you bear false witness against your neighbor. You, neither shall you desire your neighbor's wife, neither shall you covet your neighbor's bed, his field, or his manservant, or his maidservant, his ox, or his ass, or anything that is yours. These words you will spoke unto all your assembly in the mount, out of the midst of the fire, of the cloud, and of the thick darkness, with a great voice. And he added no more. And he wrote them in 2 tables of stone and delivered them unto me. And it is so.
And it is so. Yahusha the son of Nun, chapter 1, verse 7 and verse 8. Only be you strong and very courageous, that you may observe to do according to all the Torah which Moshe my servant commanded you. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may prosper wherever you go. Let us repeat verse 8 together as I have tailored it for our time of confession. I will not let this scroll of the Torah depart from my mouth.
I will not let the scroll of the Torah depart from my mouth.
But I shall meditate on it. Day and night. That I may observe to do. According to all that is written in it. For then I shall make my way prosperous. And act wisely. Now look at your neighbor, tell your neighbor, you shall act wisely.
And you shall act wisely.
Look at your other neighbor, tell your other neighbor, you shall act wisely.
And you shall act wisely.
Come on, look at your other neighbor across the room and tell him, you shall act wisely. And you shall act wisely. Now take your hand and place it over your heart and say, I'll be Yahuwah. I shall act wisely. Come on, I'll be Yahuwah. I shall act wisely. Come on, I endeavor to act wisely. I endeavor to act wisely. And it is so. And it is so. Repeat with me. I purpose to develop my ruach. I purpose to walk in the light of life.
purpose to walk in the light of life.
I am a new creation.
I am a creation.
I am born again.
I am born again.
I am a new creature.
I am a new creature.
I have the life and nature
I have the life and nature
of Yahuwah
of Yahuwah
in my Ruach.
in my Ruach.
That life
That life
is the light of men.
is the light of men.
I purpose to walk
My purpose to walk
in the light of life.
in the light of life.
Yahuwah's life
Yahuwah's life
is in me.
is in me.
Yahuwah's knowledge
Yahuwah's knowledge
is in me.
is in me.
Yahuwah's skill
Yahuwah's skill
is in me.
is in me.
Yahuwah's ability
Yahuwah's ability
is in me.
is in me.
Yahuwah's wisdom
Yahuwah's wisdom
is in me.
is in me.
He is instructing me.
He is instructing me.
He is leading me.
He is leading me.
I am a child of Yahuwah.
I am a child of Yahuwah.
The Ruach Kodesh
Ruach Kodesh
in me is leading me.
in me is leading me.
I'll follow
I'll follow
the leading
the leading
of the Ruach Kodesh.
of the Ruach Kodesh.
I'll walk
I'll walk
in the light of life.
in the light of life.
I'll walk
I'll walk
in the light of life.
in the light of life.
And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so.
Let us turn our attention to the book of Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 1 through 14. These are the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments which Yahuwah your power command to teach you, that you might do them in the land where you are going to enter and possess it, that you might fear Yahuwah your power to keep all his statutes, his commandments, which I command you, you and your son and your grandson, all the days of your life, and that your days may be prolonged. Hear therefore, O Yisrael, and observe to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may increase mightily as Yahuwah, power of your fathers, has promised you, in the land that flows with milk and honey. Hear, O Yisrael, Yahuwah, our supreme one, Yahuwah is the God. Shema Yisrael, Yahuwah is our Savior. Yahuwah is a God. And you shall love Yahuwah your power, your supreme one, with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words which I command you this day shall be in your heart. And you shall teach them diligently unto your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your bed, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them a sign upon your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them upon the posts of your bed and on your gates. And it shall be when Yahuwah your power shall have brought you into the land which he swore unto your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give you great and goodly cities which you did not build, and houses full of all good things which you filled not, and wells dug which you did not dig, vineyards and olive trees which you did not plant. When you shall have eaten and be full, then beware lest you forget Yahuwah, which brought you forth out of the land of Mitzrayim, from the bed of slavery. You shall fear Yahuwah your power and serve him, and shall swear by his name. You shall not go after the power of the people which are round about you. For Yahuwah your power is a jealous power among you, lest the anger of Yahuwah your power be kindled against you, and he destroy you from off the face of the earth. You shall not tempt Yahuwah your power as you tempted him in Massa. You shall diligently, somebody say diligently, keep the commandments of Yahuwah your power, and his testimonies and his statutes, which he has commanded you. And you shall not do that you shall do that which is right and good in the sight of Yahuwah, that it may be well with you, and that you may go in and possess the good land which Yahuwah swore unto your fathers. And it is so. And it is so. I'm sorry. 15:8. Sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination, and exceeding offensive unto you, Yahuwah. But the prayer of the upright is your delight. Mishnah 3:4. So shall you find good understanding, high esteem in the sight or judgment of Yahuwah and man. And it is so. And it is so. Tehillim 34:15. The eyes of Yahuwah are upon the upright, and his ears are open unto our cry. The upright cry, and Yahuwah heareth and delivereth us out of all our troubles. Acts 1:8. But we shall receive power after that the Ruach Kodesh has come upon us,
And we shall be witnesses unto him both in Jerusalem and all Judea and Samaria and unto the utmost part of the earth. And it is so. It is so. To him the one and one, but who is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the unrighteous, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the instructions of Abba Yahuwah, and he doth meditate upon it day and night. Gabriel 11:6, but without belief it is impossible to please him. For he that comes to you must be that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. It takes belief to be our obedient, diligent discipline. Ayah 33:4, the Ruach HaKodesh of Yahuwah hath made me, and the breath of the Almighty hath given me life. Micah 4:8, but truly I am full of power by the Ruach HaKodesh of Yahuwah, and of judgment, and of might, to declare unto Yaakov his transgressions, and to Yisrael his sin. And it is so.
It is so.
Yehukin and Aleph, chapter 5, verse 4 and 5. For whatsoever was born of Yahuwah overcometh the world, and this is the victory that overcometh the world. Even I will believe. Who is he that overcometh the world, but he that believeth that Yahushua is the Son of Yahuwah? Yehukin and Aleph, chapter 2, verse 5 and 6. But whoever keeps his word, talking about the Torah, truly the love of Yahuwah is perfected in him. By this we know that we are in him. He who says he abides in him ought himself to walk just as he walked. And it is so.
It is so.
Verse 17, and the world passes away in the lust thereof, but he that doeth the will of Yahuwah abideth forever. Somebody say abideth forever.
Abideth forever.
Abideth forever. Now as we take this time to go into prayer, to pray for loved ones and those that are in unsafe conditions, to pray for those that have addictions and are struggling, those that are in need of deliverance. As we take this time now, and as I use this as a platform for our time of prayer tonight, our Yom Shalishi time in our class. Abba Yahuwah, the needs of your people, Yisrael, are multiplied. And their knowledge is limited. May it be your will, O Yahuwah, our Savior, that you grant to each individual sufficient livelihood, and you give to everyone adequately, according to his or her lacking. And do that which is good in your eyes. Worship for you, O Yahuwah. Hear our prayer. As we stand before you this night, Abba Yahuwah, we Torah you for life, we Torah you for our health and our strength. We Torah you for your instructions and your guidance that you give unto us each and every day. We Torah you for being believers that are standing and not afraid to stand and confess who we are. I Torah you, Abba Yahuwah, for bringing your people out of depression, out of confusion, out of the slums. And what I mean by slums, I'm talking about in the mindset, in the way that we think, in the way that we used to think. I Torah you for regulating our minds, regulating our hearts, and regulating our emotions, our soul. As we come before you this night, asking you to forgive us of any and all sin, blot out our transgressions, that there be nothing between us and thee. Strengthen your people from the core. As we reach out to you, as we hunger and thirst after your uprightness, fill us till we want no more. Fill us till there is no room for anything else. As we stand before you, a people that were once not a people, not recognized as anything, but now that you have made us to be recognized and known as your people, help us to walk in integrity and in your truth. Help us to be people of wisdom and help us to act wisely. I try you for us to be representatives of the Torah and of your kingdom, the kingdom of power. I try you for opening doors for your people that no man can close, and close doors that no man can reopen. I Torah you for healing. I Torah you for us becoming a people that are autonomous, that we will be a community, that we will be a nation, that will look unto one another and look unto you, the author and finisher of our belief. I Torah you, Abba Yahuwah, for strengthening us, your people, from the very crown of our head to the very sole of our feet. As we look unto you, as we desire more of you and less of us, we Torah you for our gift, the gift of salvation, the gift of covenant, the gift of repentance. We Torah you for your Mashiach, that gave his life that we can stand before you and have a right to come to the throne and make our requests and petitions known unto you. We love you this night. We love you, we love you, we love you. As we continue to come to you, as we continue to pour our hearts out unto you, as we continue to seek you daily, night in and day out, that we may know your will, that we may continue to be solidified and secured and confident in this way that you've given unto us. We glorify you for that, doing that what you've done and that what you're yet going to do. Breathe on us, immerse us afresh in your truth. I glorify you, Abba, for every ear that is listening on tonight. Let them not walk away confused. Let them not walk away in delusional and delirious, but let them walk away strengthened and empowered and confident in knowing that you are able to do all things but fail. I adore you for what you're doing. I adore you, Abba, for your strength, your people. In the mighty name of Yahushua, and it is Leviticus chapter 11, verse 13 through 21. And it shall come to pass, if you listen carefully to my commandments, which I command you this day, to love Yahuwah your power, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul, that I will give you the rain of your land in its due season, the first rain and the latter rain, that you may gather in your corn, and your wine and your oil. And I will send grass in your fields for your cattle, that you may eat and be full. Take heed to yourselves that your heart be not deceived, and you turn not aside and serve other power, and worship them, and then Yahuwah's wrath be ignited against you. And he shut up Shemaiah, that there be no rain, and that the land yield not her fruit, unless you perish quickly from off the good land which Yahuwah gives you. Therefore shall you lay up these my words in your heart and in your soul, and bind them for a sign upon your hand, that they may be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall teach them your children, speaking of them when you sit in your bed, and when you rise up, and when you lie down, and when you walk. And you shall write them upon the doorposts of your bed, and upon your gates, that your days may be multiplied, and the days of your children in the land which Yahuwah swore to your eyes, to give them as the days of Shemaiah upon the earth. For if you shall carefully keep all these statutes which I command you, to do them, to love Yahuwah your power, to walk in all his halakha, and to cling unto him. And it is so. And it is so. And to cling unto him. And to cling unto him. It is important that we cling unto him. Because when we cling unto him, anything that's not like him is not going to stick. It won't stick to us. And that's why it's important that we cling to him. Because the more we cling to him and the tighter we cling to him, the more efficient and the better our lives will be. And the more it will become easy to shake off stuff that's not right. And it is so. Let us bow before I had this time and let us confess this together. May the utterance of my mouth and the deliberation of my heart be desirable before you. O Yahuwah, my rock, and my redeemer. May the utterance of my mouth and the deliberation of my heart be desirable before you. O Yahuwah, my rock, and my redeemer. And it is so. And it is so. We have just recited to hymn 19 and 15, and it is so. You may be seated in his presence as we come to this, our Yom Shalishi Day 3 class, as we are studying on this this day, and how long Abba puts it in my heart to uncover and to reveal the abominable work of the enemy. Once again, it's important that we understand in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 1 through 14, when he tells us in verse 14 not to take up or not to follow the powers of the people around us. It is important that we really take that to heart.
That's right.
It's important that we understand that. You shall not go after other power of the power of the people which are round about you. It is important that we let that burn into our hearts, our subconscious, and our souls, and everything about us. We are supposed to allow it to burn in us.
That's right.
Why? Because the more we become familiar with it, the more it will be a part of our lives. And we will dare not find ourselves maintaining in error if we find ourselves in it. Because there will be that which will reveal to us, which is His Torah, and that will be our conscience. Because you cannot dismiss your conscience, will allow you to know something is not right. Especially as you continue to read and you continue to read diligently, His commands diligently, the scriptures that tell us not to walk in the ways of those power, the children of power, after other powers around us. And it is so.
It is so.
We want to turn our attention back to what we have been talking about, the holiday, the day that we have known for many years as the day of, or the Feast of Dedication, which we know many as Hanukkah. As I have been doing my study and doing prayer, more study, and having more things being revealed to me, I found out even on this week as we were celebrating it, that it was wrong and that it is paganism in its rawest form. It is syncretism, and it is something that a lot of those in that time during the Maccabees era took up and began to celebrate. And so it's important that we understand that we dare not follow in the ways of those that err, but follow in that what is true. Right. Once again, do we disannul or do we disregard what the Maccabean brothers did? Absolutely not. But we come to understand that we regard them, and yes, we talk of their great victories, and we even speak of as even the defeats. But at the same time, we keep it in its perspective. How do we keep it in its perspective? Is we told for the victory that they wrought and that they showed us, even in a time where there was no open word, that because they still had the Torah in their hearts and because they were still willing not to be assimilated, that He moved upon their belief in the Torah, and because they were not willing to allow it to be lost, they maintained their consistency. So, but then there are those that yet even in the midst of all that took place, they still found themselves being assimilated and still following after the ways of paganism. And as you look at Antiochus Epiphanes, the fourth, the fourth, I believe it was the fourth, was it the fifth? He was the, I think it was Antiochus. He was the fourth. And so, being the fourth, he took on the name Antiochus Epiphanes when he came into power. But his name was Mithras, and he took on that name because those that were of royalty and notoriety would normally take on the name of the deity that they worshipped or celebrated, which was Mithras, a sun deity. And so it's important that we understand when you look at the difference between the menorah and the Hanukkah, that we understand there is a major difference. There are 9 candle holders, and the 9th one represents the Shamash, which is also representative of the sun deity. And so when you see them lighting the 8 candles and then the one in the center, that is the service candle, that is the Shamash candle, which represents the sun deity. So in all that Antiochus Epiphanes did, that was what basically he created on the altar. He created that light, that synthetic light, and he created that that celebration which took place in Kislev the 25th, all the way to Tibet the 3rd. And so it is again, as a teacher and as a prophetess, my responsibility to bring correction where error resides. Right. And so being the first to walk in that correction, now I have a responsibility and an obligation to inform you. For those that already know, I commend you and I applaud you. Continue to do what you do, but I do want to say this: if you know that you know people that are walking in error, you're going to be held accountable for not opening your mouth.
Right. Thank you.
Because just because you say it's a pagan religion, doesn't mean that you've given them enough or substantial evidence to show them that it is not just a pagan religion. It is paganism in itself.
That's right.
And it's important that you allude to it. And if you don't know, then you need to find a way to convey your information or your knowledge of it to others that don't know.
That's right.
Once again, it's important that we know, because telling somebody, we don't celebrate it just because it's not a part of the 7 Moed, which are the feasts, is not enough. You need to explain to people, and there's nothing wrong with explaining to people why you don't celebrate it.
That's right.
Because you have a lot of people that don't know. Once again, I love the Maccabees. I love the Hasmonean time, because they fought and they fought until they died. They fought until they brought about a change. And so when you try to correlate them and put it together, that's the whole purpose that we were celebrating it for, because we thought that by doing this, we were commemorating the victories.
Right.
But in actuality, the victories are the victories, but this is something truly, totally separate from that.
Right.
And so I thank Abba Yahuwah for the Ruach Kodesh, and I totally thank him for prayer and being sensitive to his voice to know when he is speaking to me, when I need to change something and when I need to fix something.
That's right.
You have to understand, once again, it is our responsibility to bring our people in the truth. And don't come telling me, I didn't feel right or I knew something was wrong. I don't want to hear that, after.
Right.
And I'm not being funny and I'm not being arrogant. But at the same time, people want to come and tell you at the last minute, I knew. Well, don't come telling me now, because I know too. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And I'm going to explain it for those that don't know, and for those that have just been told it's a pagan religion. You're going to know why, and you're going to know the roots of it, and you're going to know now that if you didn't know how to intelligently explain it to somebody, you will be able to. So once again, I truly do Toda Abba Yahuwah for his divine intervention and his correcting me, things that I saw that just didn't sit right with me as we had gone in it. And on the 5th day, that 5th day is when he began to deal with me. You have to understand, 5 is the number of people say of grace, but I say it's the number of mercy. That 5th day, mercy showed up and began to show me the errors of my ways. Now you have to understand something. Love comes in and does that. And what are we supposed to do? If we know we have been promoting it, we're supposed to go back and fix what we've basically been telling.
That's right.
That's what we're responsible and obligated to do. Once again, it's important that we understand this is a time that they fought during the dynasty, the Hasmonean dynasty, during the Maccabees reign. They fought to keep from being assimilated. They fought to keep the Torah pure and raw. But there were those that wanted to contaminate it, and guess what? They did. They did contaminate it to a degree, because even in that, what they did, Yahuwah still kept a remedy and continued to show forth the error even in this. So on tonight, we're going to look at some things. I'm going to read some literature, and then we're going to look at some scriptures once again. We looked at Yehukin in chapter 10, verse 22, all the way to 39, and it gave us gave us an example of things, and it just showed us how, once again, when we read things, we read it out of context because of the way we were taught. We read and believed that in that first verse that Yahushua, because of that season and time, that he was there celebrating it. He was not celebrating the feast of dedication, but he was there around Saul's porch. And so once again, they said that to give us, allude to the season and to what was taking place. The reason the Pharisees and the Sadducees were upset with him, I truly see now, is because he was not a partaker of their folly and foolishness. So they began to be adamant at him and began to talk about him and began to question how long would he keep them in suspense. He never kept them in suspense of who he was. It just was not revealed to them because he was not their shepherd.
That's right.
And he made it clear, you are not my sheep. That's why you don't know who I am. And you can't recognize me because my sheep know my voice. And you don't recognize my voice because you're not my sheep.
Right.
Then he begins to tell them in chapter 10, verses 1, chapter 9, 1 through 7. And it begins to talk about the man who was born blind. And how it had nothing to do with the parents, but it had everything to do that the power of Yahuwah would be made manifest.
Right.
And he revealed to them that I am the light of the world. In other words, I am the light of Yisrael. And he said that when darkness comes, that light would be, when that light was taken away, that darkness would come. In other words, that when they would be swept away, and that when he would be taken away, that light would no more be there. Now you have to understand what he continues to reveal to me is that the absence of illumination brings darkness.
Right.
And where darkness is, there is the absence of illumination. But where illumination is, it is the absence of darkness. In other words, he was talking about the light of who he was. He said, work while it is day, but when the night cometh, no man can work. In other words, that's not talking about a death. That is talking about the absence of truth. And you have to understand something. When truth is not being rehearsed, and when truth is not being promoted, and when it is not being taught, when it is not being proclaimed, when it is not being preached, it will begin to fade out. Yes, it will. It will begin to fade out. And so he was reminding them, and he was also, you can look at that as being a warning, that you got to hold on to the truth. Because if you don't hold on to the truth, then watch this, you don't meditate on it according to Yahushua, the son of Nun, chapter 1, verse 7 and 8. If you don't meditate on it, and you don't keep it fresh in you, you will eventually lose it.
Right.
Somebody might say, well, I'll never lose it. Stop meditating upon it. Stop making it alive and keep it practical in your life, and you will forget it. See, that's why they wanted to assimilate, and they wanted to take the people out of their cultural ways, because they realized that we could take them out of their culture, take them out of their way of life, then we have them. Then we have them. Are you hearing me?
Yeah.
It's important that we understand that. Because if you take anything or anyone outside of their natural habitat and their culture, and you let them begin to be raised and taught in that area and in that place of their oppressors or anybody else, guess what? Eventually they will forget their culture.
That's right.
And their ways.
That's right.
That's what Alexander wanted to do, and when he died and couldn't do it, he put Antiochus Epiphanes in charge. And eventually, after all that fighting, they still ended up getting there and causing some changes. So once again, we're going to look at some literature, and we're going to read. Truth or tradition, Hanukkah. Whenever anyone mentions the word Hanukkah, the immediate thought is centered around a Jewish feast that is celebrated around the time of Christmas, according to the Jewish teaching. And now we're talking about the Jewish teaching, those that we know they're not us, and we know that ain't us because we are Israel, not Jewish and not Jew. The feast must be observed from the 25th of the 9th month, which is known by its Babylonian name, for 8 days. While this has become possibly the most important time of the year for the Orthodox Jews, many who have come out of mainstream Christianity in order to walk in the Torah and learn their true Hebraic roots find themselves being emotionally attached to this feast of Hanukkah and look to rabbinic sources to find out how they are to keep it. And it's the truth. Because as soon as you come in the truth, you start looking at these things and you don't discount it because you look at what it is attached to. But we got to also look at, once again, where did the attachment come from? Once again, it's in the month of Kislev all the way to the month of Tevet. And so it's important that we understand certain things. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Now, it is not something that should be kept. The question is this feast centered around traditional commandments of men, or is it scripturally commanded for us to observe? Now, once again, we're going to find out that this was something that was adopted. And it is a custom that should not be observed. Even though for many of us, we observed it because we linked it once again to the Maccabees' victory and for their bringing some shalom to certain things. But as I read even in the Maccabees in chapter 1, I believe it was chapter 4, verse 46, when he began to talk about as they had the temple put back in place and how they set things in order. One of the things that they did not proceed further in was because he said there is no prophet to instruct us. So basically they could not proceed any further. So if the instructions to celebrate this and do this didn't come from the prophets, the question comes, then who did these instructions and guidelines come from? Right. Once again, it's important that we understand that. And I read that it sent off a red flag in my soul. When I read, I was like, wow. And I had read the book of Maccabees before, but not in the manner that I read it, walking in truth. We read things, and sometimes as we read it, once again, we are taught to read and see what we need to see, and what we don't need to see, we were taught not to see it. And so that's one of those things where you come in with Romans 12:2. And be ye not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may present that what is perfect and excellent and right in the sight of Abba Yahuwah. There still has to be a renewal, because if we don't renew our minds, we will find ourselves still skating and slipping and sliding in certain things and in certain areas of our lives where we need to lock it down. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
So once again, this is to help those that did not know, but for those of you once again that knew, I commend you. I'm jealous of you in one way at all. Right. Neither am I upset with you, but I commend you. But this is for those that don't know and didn't know. I'm here to bring clarity and bring forth instructions and truth to your hearts and minds. Now, most who have an idea of what Hanukkah is about, this will tell us what the center around a miracle of how small amount of oil lasted for 8 days and keeping the menorah alight. At the time of the rededication of the temple after the Maccabean revolt against the Greeks, and there is a tradition of lighting candles each night. Now, once again, this is where we took it up at, and this is where we took it as being a part of our history, because once again, we connected it, I connected it with the victories of the Maccabean brothers. And you have to understand, once again, we're going to find out that there was no miracle. And even when we read it in the Maccabees, it said they put the oil in the lights, and they lit it, and they put the showbread, and they put everything back in its original place after they built the walls, and they ran everybody out of there that wasn't supposed to be in there. And nowhere do we read, even in that what they were doing, that there was a miracle of oil that lasted for 8 days. Right. So once again, some theologians said that it happened, that basically after the Babylonian captivity, this is when they began to bring forth and add things to the story that was not there. Right. All right. Now, looking at the things that also became a part of the Festival of Lights. Now we'll look at, as I read it from here, the writings in Aleph and Bet Maccabees. The historical events that culminated in what is known as Hanukkah is clearly outlined in Maccabees, Aleph, and Bet, which was recorded within a couple of decades after the events that took place. First and second, or Aleph and Bet Maccabees, are parallel accounts believed to have been written by two different authors who describe similar events. Anytime you got 2 and 3 and 4 people writing something, you will have some differences. Right. It is just human nature. If you tell one person, and these are tests they do in school, they'll tell the class to write a paragraph, and it could be about flowers, blue flowers. Everybody is going to come up with a different scenario and with a different story. Why? Because everybody is not the same. And when you find that, you're going to find that everybody's going to have some similarities, but that at the end of it, or at the core of it, you're going to see that there's truly many differences. Because everybody is different. Right. Even though we're writing about what? The same flower. Blue flower. Are you hearing me? Yes. A blue bouquet of flowers. All right. The story begins in 168 BC, before the Common Era, when the land of Yasraya was being ruled by the evil Seleucid Greek king Antiochus IV. Antiochus IV believed that his empire would be more secure if all his subjects became more Greek. Sounds just like Constantine, doesn't it? Yeah. You have to understand, they all had that mindset. So you will always find the similarities of them coming in and trying to take over. The main thing they always wanted to do was bring everybody in and make them like themselves, just like the Lord. Anybody that watches Star Trek, you will see, especially in the new, Star Trek, the New Generation. What's it called? Star Trek, the new one. And so forth. So when you watch that, and I'm a fan of it, I just can't think of the name. When you find and you look at it, you realize that the Borg had that Greek mentality. That when they would go and they would grab a planet, the first thing they would do is turn everybody into Borg. And Borg, they would say, we be Borg, we be Borg. And everything they did was the same. They ate everything the same way. They wore everything the same way. Now somebody would say, but isn't that what the Ibram are supposed to do? I wear fringes. We all wear fringes, but at the same time, we don't wear them all the same. Right. Even though we wear them on the four corners of our garments, they're still going to be different because everybody ain't the same height. Right. Everybody ain't the same shape, so we wear them, but there's still going to be some differences. We are Hebrew, we all eat kosher, but that doesn't mean that we all like the same color. That doesn't mean that we all like the same food, because some people like goat, some people like lamb. That's right. Are you here with me? Yes. And so it's important that we understand that. I heard a rap in my head. And so it's important that we think about that. So once again, just because we are Ibram does not mean that now everybody has to come and like the color purple, because it's the color of royalty. Right. Some people like orange, some people like green, some people love the color black. Some people love the color blue, any color blue. Are you hearing me? Red, gold. Does that mean that we are not unified? Absolutely not. What unifies us is our love and our strong belief in the Torah, the instructions of our Yahuwah. Right. But they wanted to come in and they wanted to destroy the southern partners of Yisrael and make everybody become Greek. In 168 BCE, which is before Common Era, he issued a decree that would force all his subjects to adopt the Greek culture and only worship the Greek gods or powers. This process was called Hellenization, to make one Greek, and was primarily accepted by most who saw the Greek way being more advanced and culturally relevant. Even the Yehuda of the time refused to submit to this Hellenization process, and therefore Antiochus issued a series of laws that were designed to suppress Torah observance. Now you have to understand, and there were those that did walk in it. That is why when you read in the Red Dash, you find the Hellenizers, those that came against them, these were not Greeks, but they were Greeks, because that's the culture that they had taken on. I'm not from South Carolina, but I'm a Louisiana girl. But because I am here, it says on my driver's license that I am a resident of South Carolina. Are you hearing me? Yeah. So it's important that we understand these things so that we will be able to distinguish between these things. Right. Once again, you have to understand, when it talks about those that were the Hellenists, these are the people that were Ibram, that were basically defected and became Greeks. Right. By their culture, their way of life. And you have to understand, the Greeks were the ones who introduced the pigs into the picture. Right. Because they were the ones that ate pigs. They were the ones that farmed pigs. So you can see where our people end up, basically, when we started, our people started eating, stopped eating kosher and started eating these things. This is how it was introduced to us through this door right here. All right. Maccabees Aleph, chapter 1, verse 44 through 50. And it says, and the king sent letters by messengers to Jerusalem and the cities of Yehuda. He directed them to follow customs strange to the land, to forbid burnt offerings and sacrifices and drink offerings in the temple, to profane Sabbaths and feasts. Now you have to understand what profane means. It just doesn't mean your actions, it means your mouth. Right. This is where when a person uses profanity to express their disagreement or something. So basically, he would make them curse. Well, curse. He would make them use profanity. He would make them use profanity to express their disagreement with Sabbath and the feasts. Are you hearing me? Yes. This is why it's important to us to watch our language. To defile the temple and to the set apart people set up altars and sacred precincts and shrines for idols, sacrifice swine and unclean animals, and leave their sons uncircumcised. Now, if you read and you know anything about the Maccabees in the first part, it talks about those. When Alexander came and when the Greeks began to basically set up home or set up shop, one of the things that a lot of them did, the older ones did, was they went through a surgery to replace the foreskin that had been removed. And this is why this way, when they would go and participate in the gymnastics, and they would go and participate in going to the gymnasiums, because they would go in there and they would do these things naked. This is why Yahuwah said, when you get in, you shall not go after the power of the people which are round about you. And so what they did was, now I'm still blown away by them going and having the foreskin sewed back on with a special surgery, so that while they stood up there naked and an abomination, wrestling and swimming with men, that they would be able to recognize who they were. This is why nobody that's walking in should ever endorse their children being in the athletic arena. You're going to be a football player. You're going to be a basketball star. You're going to be why? Because when they did these things, they did it but naked. That's horrible. That is just nasty. They wrestled naked. And all the people, the Greeks, watched them and they got a thrill out of this. That's something wrong. And when you watch even the Olympics, and when they run track, it's hard to watch them run track because they be half naked. That's talking about wind resistance. That ain't no wind resistance. You just go back onto the form of things. Because they have it so skin tight and so provocative that it make you not want to watch it. Don't nobody want to see nobody sprint. And I'm being truthful. You can see everything. That is not, to me, that is not acceptable. Because now it's really not about watching the games. It's about watching those people and their bodies. Next step will be, they will be out there running naked. They almost there. That stuff they wear, you start thinking, oh my goodness, you can't even watch it. None of them, women or men. Because it's too provocative. So once again, you have to be careful what you indulge in and what you push off on your children. I never wanted my children to go and play. I've always enjoyed the sport, basketball. I've always. I started playing it now, but I know how to play it. To go to be a professional and to be one in it and no. I would never, ever encourage anybody to do that. Right. Because you have to understand there's a high price behind that dime that you want your children to have. So this is what they did. They were to make themselves abominable by everything unclean and profane, so that they should forget the Torah and change all the ordinances. And whoever does not obey the command of the king shall die. And that's what they did. They went in, and this is how they forgot. This is why he tells us, do not forget. Carefully, carefully. Are you hearing me? Yes. He said, if you be careful to remember it, it's important that we understand that carefulness for a reason. Because people begin to be careless when it comes to certain things. Are you hearing me? Yes. Verse 17 of chapter, I'm just reading it to you, of chapter 6, he tells us, you shall not tempt Yahuwah your power as you tempted him in Massah. Verse 17, you shall diligently keep the commandments of Yahuwah your power and his testimonies and his statutes which he has commanded you. Watch this, you shall do that which is right and good in the sight of Yahuwah, that it may be well with you. Now, once again, you have to understand the reason why they forbid them to do these things, because they knew the moment they stopped, that would be their demise. It's just like exercising. The moment you stop exercising and become loose, that weight jumps right back on you. Your muscles don't staying in that firm state. They don't stay there because you got to remember you're conditioning and you're causing your body that muscle memory. And when you don't keep it, do what it takes to keep that memory locked in, then what happens? It loses its memory and your muscles begin to be soft and they sag. It's true. That's why it's important that, and they tell you anybody that is a trainer. Now someone might say, well, when you go to the gym, I don't go to the gym. I stay at home and do my stuff. Because even there you got to be careful because they be just about naked too. So once again, a lot of things you have to do at home. Get you an exercise regimen. Get you somebody that you can work out with. You can work at home. Walking is one of the greatest exercises you can ever get because it works on the total body. And if you want to get somebody that you know and you trust that's in the way, that's a believer, that knows how, that has an exercise machine that you can use. Or go to Goodwill and find you on a bike or get out there and walk. But stay fit, stay healthy. Once again, you want to maintain the mindset because you got to remember these things were given to them because they told them, go build a gymnasium. Let them go on out there, let everybody go out there and let them exercise. And then on top of that, let them exercise with you. You can't come out there with all the clothes on. Because then everybody gonna know who you are. So once again, you have to understand when you go exercise, it's true. Now they have certain things you can look at, and you might as well not have nothing on. And some of them know exactly what they're doing, right? Because their whole thing is to entice you from truth to walk in their ways. So once again, get with somebody that can go out there and walk. Just don't walk by yourself. It's just not safe for me and home. If you don't want to do that, go on. You got a lot of people that you can get online that have a nice regimen and they're dressed, and you can follow that. Right. But you just want to stay. You want to stay healthy and fit, and it is so. It is. In order to carry this out, the first thing the Greeks did was capture the temple and sacrifice pigs from the slaughter place of their pagan god Zeus. They then forced each Yehuda home set up an altar to the Greek sun gods at their homes. Public altars were set up all over the city, and Yehuda were forced to eat pigs that were sacred or sacrificed to Zeus. So once again, they were forced to eat stuff. And watch this, and some that willfully did it, it just passed on, and passed on, and passed on. They went in and made them stop doing what they were doing. So once again, you have to understand the core of this and the roots of this thing. You can't just look at it as just being, well, it's just a pagan feast or a pagan day. No, you got to look at the bottom line of it. Right. Are you hearing me? Yes. And then be able to intelligently tell somebody, no, let me give you a little history of this thing here. Right. It was on the 15th day of the 9th month, Kislev, that the abomination of desolation was set up a slaughter place in the temple. They then destroyed and burnt any Torah writings that were found on the 25th day of the 9th month. They sacrificed people on the slaughter place of power. Even when you look once again, this was the abomination that was done. Are you hearing me? Yes. And so it's important. I believe it is in Daniel's chapter 9 where it talks about this, but there are some that say that Daniel is not referring to this. But once again, when we look at this was still an abomination. This is an abomination, what they were doing. Not only did they sacrifice pigs, but they made the people eat the pigs. Right. Eat it or die. So you have to understand, you have to really look at what their commitment was. Because you had a bunch of them that was eating that pig. Are you hearing me? Yes. They hung the children and killed all who had circumcised them. Many Yehuda chose not to eat pig and profane the covenant, and chose to rather be put to death instead of being Hellenized. So you have to understand, in the time of Yahusha, when he was talking to the Hellenized, he was talking to who? Ibram believers, or Ibram that were once believers, but yet defected, and he was talking to, watch this, their family members, ancestors. Are you hearing me? Yes. Generations and generations of people that had basically passed down that abominable way of life. In those days, there was a priest from a small town in Shamaron whose name was Mattathias, or Mattathias, son of Yehuda, who along with his sons tore their garments and lamented the invasion of the Greeks and the desolation of the temple. And when the Greeks came to their own, Matthias and his sons gathered with all the people of the town, and they openly refused to submit to this and would not forsake the Torah of power, and called all who were zealous for the Torah and held fast the covenant of power in order to continually follow him. He and his sons then fled to the mountains, and they became outlaws. When you stand for truth and you don't do all the rest of that stuff, I know you are an outlaw. Right. And let me tell you something, for those of you that go and still let your children get vaccinated, you better know what they grow that stuff. They grow it in dead dogs and they grow it in pigs.
That's right.
So while you're thinking that stuff is kosher, it is not. That stuff has pig juice and everything else in it because they grow it in there. It's almost like you can't really hardly find anything that is without pig in it, swine in it. Right. They use swine for almost everything. It's in breads, it's in vitamins, it's in juices, and you really have to be careful of what you intake. That's why it's important that we know these things. And what we need to do, instead of always following those things, because I know sometimes, we try to find, you start looking it up online, and you try to go through there. We need to set up something for our own community that has, for the Israel, that shows us stuff. Look, don't eat this, don't buy this, because this is not right. One that shows us what is kosher and what is not. Mm-hmm. What is acceptable and what is not. Do you not know it's even in soaps and even in perfumes? Right. And colognes? Yes. Child, they use pig for everything. That's why you have to be careful of the stuff you buy. Right. We have to be very careful because there are some things we do and really don't have a clue. But it's important that we do that, and we need to set up a site that has it for us as a people, that shows us stuff that you don't know, products, hair products, all those kinds of stuff that has swine in it. Because see, they know how to change up names, or they know how to put them big names in there to make you think it's something else. What is that one? It starts with a D. Diglyceride, I think it is. No, not glycerides. It's something like that, but it's a dicer or something. It starts with a D. It's like a diglyceride. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about? And I was like, wow. If you didn't know what that was, you would think it was just another word. No, it's another word for pork. And you have to understand that all gelatin is not pork, but you got to make sure, unless it says beef or vegetable or chicken, it's pork. Mm-hmm. So you got to be careful with those things. Once again, they were forcing them to eat these things. Now, once again, the Greeks pursued many who fled to the wilderness and came to fight against them on Shabbat, and killed 1,000 people who refused to lift a stone on the Sabbath against the attacking Greeks. Matthias heard about this and mourned. Matthias and his sons then resolved to stand up and fight, went around breaking down all the economic slaughter places that had been set up by the Greeks, and he recovered the Torah from the Greeks. Now you have to understand what is so crazy with this is that when they came in, those that knew where the Torah scrolls were and they knew where different writings were, they took it and they burned, and what they didn't burn, they tore up. Right. That's literature that's gone. Unless it was kept in somebody's heart and mind. That's why it's important that you don't have it on this, but you have it in here. Right. And if you have it in here, then it will come back up here, even if at that time when you're talking to somebody you can't remember it. As long as it's in your memory bank and in your church bank, it will come back up. It may come back at a time when you're doing something totally different than what you need for it to come up, but it'll be there. That's right. And that's important why we put it in here. But they tore it up. Why? Because they wanted to send a message. Now you have to understand, this is why when we get the literature everybody's trying to get the writings with all the names of Yahuwah and Yahusha. We're trying to get those writings that have everything in the manner they're supposed to. The reason why it's hard to find is because it went through a time where they were tearing them up. And they were basically destroying the works. So once again, it's important that we understand that what we do get, we cherish it. Are you hearing me? Yes. Even when they took it and made it the Biblios, the Bible, it went through a major transformation. And if you know, I think there's something like 5,000 or so many translations. You start thinking, why do you need that many translations? Because every time they want to make sure that they continue to translate it, so that you will never know what it is. Once again, they will basically translate it out of its original state and out of its original meaning, so you will never really know the truth.
That's right.
That's why we ought to cherish what we have, especially if you have something remotely close to it. And when you don't, you know his name ain't God, you know his son is not Jesus, then don't put that in there.
Thank you.
Some stuff you just have to work with and do the best you can with it until you have something better to work with. But I don't like the King James Version, period. But if you have to work with that, work with it. But don't call on the names that are in there.
Right.
Use wisdom. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
All right. When it came for Mattathias to die, he told his sons to be zealous for the Torah. He told his sons to be zealous for what? For the Torah. Now you have to understand, he didn't tell zealous for the people. Because I'm telling you, being zealous for people, you get disheartened real quick. Especially when you tell them, look, I'm doing this to help you. And then they turn around and still run into the hands of the enemy. But when you are doing it for the Torah, the instructions for the people, then when the people are able to do what? Rehearse the instructions. Then they will be able to submit and find themselves loving and following in truth, because they know it's not just based upon man.
That's right.
But it's based upon the instructions about the Yahuwah. Once again, this is truth or tradition, what we're looking at. Now, and be ready to give their lives for the covenant of their Abbas, as he reminded them of the belief of Abraham, Joseph, Phineas, Yeshua, which is the son of Nun, Caleb, Dawood, and Daniel, encouraging them not to be afraid of sinful men. Once again, he had to bring out the testimonies of them that stood and would not be assimilated, would not allow themselves to be forcefully brought into something that they did not want to accept as their truth. He then made his son Yehuda Maccabeus their captain and commanded them to observe the Torah and avenge the wrong of their people. First thing he told them to do is to observe the Torah. That's why it's important that we rehearse the Torah. That's why I love Yahusha 1, 7, and 8. And I love 8 because that's the one that we are supposed to adhere to. I will not let this book of the Torah depart out of my mouth, but I shall meditate on it day and night, that I may observe to do according to all that is written in it. For then I shall prosper and act what? Wisely. I like wisely. Right. So it's important that we understand we will prosper, and through our prospering of truth and knowledge, we will act wisely. Right. A person that acts ignorant and foolish is a person absent of prospering so that they can be wise. And that's not talking about money. That's right. That's right. That's talking about knowledge and information that helps us to be wise. That's right. And it is so. He then made his son, once again, Yehuda Maccabeus, their captain, and commanded them to observe the Torah and avenge the wrong of their people. Yehuda Maccabee then rose up and became like a lion, avenging his people, and grieved many kings. After 3 years of intense fighting against the Greeks, Yehuda Maccabees and his army defeated the Greeks and took back the temple. After mourning and fasting over the defilement of the temple, they tore down the abominable slaughter place of Zeus, upon which pigs were slaughtered, and proceeded to cleanse the temple. Now, once again, they proceeded to cleanse the temple. After cleansing the temple, because there was no prophet there, there was nothing else for them to do. Are you hearing me? Yes. All right. Maccabees, Aleph, chapter 4, verses 40 through 47. And they cleansed the temple and removed the stones to an unclean place. They deliberated what to do about the slaughter place of burnt offering, which had been profaned, and they thought it best to tear it down, lest it bring reproach upon them. Gentiles, those Greeks, had defiled it. Now, once again, you have to understand, not only was it on that, but you have to remember, those that were in there offering up also were Yehuda. Talking about our people. Are you hearing me? So they tore down the altar and stored the stones in a convenient place on the temple hill, until there should come a prophet to tell what to do with them. They took an unhewn stones as the law directs, and built a new slaughter place like the former. They built a new slaughter place of unhewn stones, as it stipulates in Shema 20:24-26. And restored the true set-apart vessels for the service of the temple. So you have to understand they had to find the true utensils and the true vessels and put them in there because they had messed it all up. Sounds like today, doesn't it?
Yes.
You have to understand when you look at a church, what is the first thing you see in it? Crosses, steeples. Are you hearing me? Communion sets, communion tables, a big old cross sitting up on top of the podium. All those things, once again, and you have to understand, we are not the church, we are the congregation. But the congregation of Yahuwah has lost her identity and believes that she is a church born out of Catholicism. But you have to understand, when you understand your true roots, that you are the congregation and not the church, then you will begin to put away all of those idols and idol worshiping and those symbols. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
You will put that stuff away and you will turn to the true and living King, our power, our Yahuwah. You will go in and tear down the altar that was built to desecrate and to defame our Yahuwah. Altars in there that were not supposed to be. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Once again, it's important that we understand we are not the church, we are the congregation.
That's right.
And we don't have anything in here that says otherwise.
That's right.
You got a cross up in there, you a church. You got a steeple, you a church. You got a communion table, you a church. You talking about Jesus and God, you are a church. And there's nowhere scripturally that exists for us as a people. But once again, you got to remember, everything was taking place. Jerusalem was almost like a metropolitan place. Everything was there, and anything was there. And it is so. But they had to restore, they had to set everything back up in this place. Maccabees, Aleph, chapter 4, 48 and 51. They also rebuilt the sanctuary and the interior of the temple and consecrated the courts, because everything was had been desecrated. They made new Kaddish vessels and brought the lampstand, the altar of incense. You have to understand, what is the lampstand? The menorah. And the table into the temple. Then they burned incense on the altar and lighted the lamps on the lampstand. And they gave, and these gave light in the temple. They placed the bread on the table and hung up the curtains. Thus they finished all the work that they had undertaken. And he added no more. But again, tradition. Now, after they had restored the temple, it was time to dedicate it and make it fit and clean for service, and reestablish the sacrifices that had not been done for the 3 years that the Greeks had defiled the temple. This rededication of the slaughter place took place on the 25th of the next month, 3 years to the day after the Greeks had defiled the temple by offering a pig on the slaughter place. Maccabees, Aleph, chapter 4, verse 52 to 59. And once again, this is the book of Maccabees. Early in the morning of the 25th day of the 9th month, which is the month of Kislev, in the 148th year, they rose and offered sacrifice as the Torah directs, on the new slaughter place of burnt offering, which they had built. Look at what time and what day the heathen had profaned it. Even in that, it was dedicated with songs and cisterns, harps, and cymbals. Then all the people fell upon their faces, worshiping and praising power of Shemaiah, who had given them good success. They celebrated the dedication of the slaughter place for 8 days and offered burnt offerings with gladness. They offered a sacrifice of deliverance and praise. They decked front of the temple with crowns of gold and with shields, and the gates and the chambers they renewed and hanged doors upon them. Therefore there was great gladness among the people, for that the reproach of the heathen was put away. Then Yehuda and his brothers and all the assembly of Yisrael determined that every year at that season the days of dedication of the altar should be observed with gladness and joy for 8 days, beginning with the 25th day of the month of Kislev. Now, we also have another record being given in Maccabees Bet. It's the other rendering of it. Maccabees Bet, chapter 10, verse 5 through 8. It happened that on the same day on which the temple had been profaned by the foreigners, the purification of the temple took place. That is on the 25th day of the same month, which was Kislev. And they celebrated for 8 days with rejoicing, remembering that not long before they had held the Feast of Tabernacles, when, as they wandered in the mountains and caves like beasts, therefore they bore branches and fair boughs and palms also, and sang songs unto him that had given them good success in cleansing his place. They decreed by public ordinances and vote that the whole nation of Yehuda should observe these days every year. Now, once again, as we see these words in Maccabees, Aleph, and Bet, we want to look at a few things. What happened historically and what is being celebrated as a tradition today. One of the most notable things that we should see here is the clear fact that no mention of oil and the miraculous supply of oil that supposedly caused the menorah to burn 8 days, nor the making of an 8 or 9 lampstand, which is the Hanukkah. Nowhere. The lamps and lampstand is mentioned, yes, as well as the table of showbread and other utensils that were restored in order to perform the scriptural requirements in the temple service. What is very clear is that there is no magical oil. Are you hearing? Yes. There is no magical oil. These accounts contain the most detailed records of these events, and with there being no mention of what many have been taught to believe, leaves us with a very big question of where this traditional story of the miraculous supply of oil comes from, as being the central theme according to tradition of this modern day feast. Now, the whole reason for this great celebration and dedication that took place was for the dedication of the slaughter place. And the fact that they could enjoy this time of feasting and celebrating like the Feast of Sukkot, Tabernacles, which they had not been able to celebrate correctly for 3 years due to the Greek oppression and defilement of the temple. The celebration and dedication had nothing to do with oil or its supposed miraculous supply, but rather had to do specifically with the dedication of the slaughter place, which we know is the what? Altar, the place where they sacrifice. The Hebrew word for dedication is Hanukkah, strong both meaning dedication, consecration, and corresponds to the Aramaic word Hanukkah, which we find being used in the book of Daniel. Dedication, remember, let's just forget that it's dedication. These two words are collectively used 12 times in Scripture. The Aramaic word is used twice in Daniel in the wicked king's call for the dedicating of his wicked image, and twice in Ezra when the temple of Elah was dedicated. The Hebrew word is used 8 times in Scripture, 5 times in direct reference to the offerings of dedication and consecration, brought for the slaughter place, and twice it is used for the dedication of the walls of Jerusalem. That was done with great joy, and once it was used as a title of Tehillim at the dedication of the house of Dawood. Now, in Maccabees, Aleph 4 and 56, they celebrated the dedication of the slaughter place for 8 days, and not the miraculous provision of oil that many focus on today according to traditions that have been taught. Now, once again, it asks the question, the dedication lasted 8 days. What was this and why was this? They were giving thanks to celebrate this place in dedication of Sukkot or the Tabernacles during that time. And because, remember, they could not celebrate Sukkot because for the 3 years that they were in hiding and running, they could not do it. I've even heard people say that this was supposed to be a continuation of Sukkot, but not so. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
All right. Now, which last? Okay, so now, as we clearly have read, that they celebrated with palm branches and trees, etc., and did so with great rejoicing. For Sukkot is the commanded feast for rejoicing, which too lasts for 8 days. The command is to dwell in booths for 7 days, and on the 8th they have a closing ceremony, which we know as a convocation. The scriptures have repeated and have shown for the amount of time the slaughter place was to be dedicated, as seen in Bamidbar 7 and 11. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, let them bring their offering 1 liter each day for the dedication of the slaughter place. The slaughter place was dedicated for 12 days. The Midbar 784, this was the dedication of the slaughter place from the leaders or the prince of Yasrael when it was anointed. 12 silver dishes, 12 silver bowls, 12 gold ladles. Now, let me look over here. Let me show you where that also can be found. And they tell you in Bamidbar, chapter 7, verses 1 through 17. And then you read more, 18 through 19. And so those are the times where we read about the prince bringing in the heavyweight offerings with the silver and the gold and the shekels of gold and silver and the spoons, all these utensils. But once again, syncretism, and when you start taking and removing one to replace it with another, this is how confusion comes in. Right. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
All right, now. At the dedication of the slaughter place of the temple, we see in Debre, Hayamea, Bet, which is Chronicles. And on the 8th day, they held an assembly where they performed the dedication of the slaughter place 7 days, and the festival 7 days. And on the 3rd day of the 7th month, he sent people away to their tents, rejoicing and glad of heart for the goodness of Yahuwah had done for Dawood and for Shalom, for his people, Israel. Now, Shalomo had performed the dedication for 7 days, and then had held the feast of Sukkot for 7 days. And after the 8th day of Sukkot, he sent the people away to their tents. Vayikra 23:34. The Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, is commanded to begin on the 15th day of the 7th month. And it's the last 7 days. And then Vayikra 23 and 26, there's an 8th day, the 23rd day of the 7th month, would have been the last of Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. Ezra 3:23, 2 through 4, and Yahusha, son of Yasadah, and his brothers, the priests, and Erubabel, son of Shealtiel, and his brothers arose and built the slaughter place of power of Yasrael to offer burnt offerings on it, as it is written in the Torah of Moshiach, the man of power. So they set the slaughter place on its stand, being afraid of the people of the land. And they offered burnt offerings on it to Yahuwah, both the morning and evening burnt offerings. And they performed the festival of booths, as it is written, and the daily burnt offering by number according to the right ruling for each day. Now, here in the 7th month, they rebuilt the slaughter place and performed sacrifices on it and kept Sukkot, even though they had not yet finished rebuilding the temple. In this account, we are told that the slaughter place was set up and not dedicated, as the temple had not been yet completed. And the proper dedication only took place a number of years later. In Ezra chapter 6, verses 16 through 17. Then the children of Yasrael, the priests and the Levites, and the rest of the sons of the exile did the dedication of the house of power with joy, and offered at the dedication of the house of Eli 100 bulls, 200 rams, 400 lambs, and as a sin offering for all Yasrael, 12 male goats, according to the number of the tribes of Yasrael. Even in Nehemiah, we have the account of the dedication of the walls taking place. Nehemiah 12 and 27, and at the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem, they sought out the Levites from all their places to bring them to Jerusalem to perform the dedication with gladness and with thanksgiving and with singing, cymbals, harps, and lyrics. In all of the 4 accounts of dedication we have in Scripture in regards to the slaughter place or temple or walls, we find that these dedications were not done according to a set number of days or at a specific time. What we do see in Scripture or in the writings, however, is a repeat picture of dedication or renewal of covenant often taking place in the 7th month, which pictures for us the fulfillment of Yahuwah dwelling in his restored people. According to Maccabees, this feast of dedication was done with the intention to make up the feast of Sukkot, which had not been properly kept. Now, the question we must ask ourselves is whether or not this can stand as a mandate feast for us to follow. Now, once again, should we follow as Yahuwah really be celebrating any holiday that Yahuwah himself did not command? In other words, once again, we're going to look at this Hanukkah versus what was done. As we've seen in the Scripture for 3 years, they could not celebrate what? Sukkot, the feast of dedication. Okay. Yes. Now, In the Torah, we do have scripture or structure of the instructions regarding those who are able to perform the Peshat in the second month. Yet does this standard apply to other feasts? Bemidbar 9, chapter 9, verse 10 through 13. Speak to the children of Yasrael, saying, when any male of you or your generations is unclean for a being, or is far away on a journey, he shall still perform the Peshat of Yahuwah. On the 14th day of the second month, between the evenings, they perform it. With unleavened bread and bitter herbs, they eat it. They do not leave of it until morning, and they do not break a bone of it. According to all the laws of the Peshat, they perform it. But the man who is clean and is not on a journey and has failed to perform the Peshat, that same being shall be cut off from among his people, because he did not bring the offering of Yahuwah as at its appointed time. That man bears his sin. The Maccabees had missed Sukkot, and in a manner of speaking, they held a second Sukkot, which we can clearly see was done with great joy in celebrating a great win over the enemy. Now, once again, it's important what's taking place here. Now, it says, we must ask ourselves is whether or not this can now be practiced today. As a second Sukkot, we see that the Feast of Dedication was identified with the Feast of Sukkot. Maccabees Bet 1 and 9. And now see that you keep the Feast of Tabernacles in the month of Kislev. The month of Kislev, as it was known from the Babylonian exile, as we have read, is mentioned in the 9th month. Now, does this instruction from Yahuwah or Yehuda Maccabees have the authority to change the appointed time of Yahuwah? The answer is absolutely not. Now, once again, after this victory, they wrote to the Yehudim and Mitzrayim and said in Maccabees 2, 1 and 18, therefore, whereas we are now purposed to keep the purification of the temple upon the 25th day of the month Kislev, we thought it necessary to notify you thereof, that ye also might keep it as of the Feast of Tabernacles, and of the fire when Nehemiah offered sacrifice after that he had built the temple and the slaughter place. Here we clearly see once again that this dedication was referred to being like the Feast of Sukkot or Tabernacles, and had nothing to do with a miraculous story of old that lasted days. Now, once again, it's important that we understand what's taking place here. They were what? A second Sukkot. Even though, watch this, they were doing it out of season and out of timing. Their whole thing was, we hadn't done it, so we ain't gonna wait for its appointed time. And they alluded to telling the others, this is when we do it. But once again, you cannot change the set times of the Moed of Abba Yahuwah. He has set times and he has set them in place. So once again, you have to understand their zeal. You have to understand their excitement. That during this time, once again, they wanted to make sure that they were upholding, and they didn't want to wait because of times that they could not fulfill. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Now, once again, this is what was referred to, and this is what they were doing. In the years that followed, when they were able to keep Sukkot in the correct month, that is the 7th month, the Yehudim continued to keep this feast of dedication, and even referred to as second Sukkot or Sukkot in the month of Kislev. Did the Maccabees have a right to establish such a feast? In scriptures, we have an account of a wicked king who established his own timing of feasts that were like the feast of Yehuda. Melachim Aleph, which is Kings Aleph 12, 32 and 33. And Jeroboam performed a festival on the 15th day of the 8th month, like the festival that was in Yehuda. And he offered on the altar. So he did at Beit El, slaughtering to the calves that he had made. And at Beit El, he appointed the priests of the high places which he had made. And he made offerings on the altar which he had made at Beit El on the 15th day of the 8th month, in the month which he had devised in his own heart. And he performed the festival for the children of Israel and offered on the altar and burnt incense. Now, once again, we know this is why there was division, and this is what happened to the Samaritans, or the Shemarites, which we call the Neo-Jeroboamites. They are the children or the grandchildren Jeroboam, when you look in scripture, when Yahusha is speaking to them in the book of Yehukin in chapter 4. He is talking to the Samaritans, and these are the grandchildren, the grandchildren of Jeroboam. Because it was Jeroboam that said, look, it's too far for us to go to Jerusalem, so we will go to the Mount, what was it? Let's see it on my, go to, not Grism, it'll come to me. The Mount, it'll come to me. But it was not in Jerusalem. He chose a whole other mountain to sacrifice and to go. And this is where he established a whole new regimen. And that is why when Yahusha encountered the woman at the well and she began to talk with him, that is why she basically backwards and forth, they in their conversation, Yahusha began to correct her because she was just following after the instruction of Jeroboam that had been passed down through her family after generations and after generations. So once again, we see what was done and see the error of it. And because somebody changes it, does that mean that it's right? Absolutely not. Right. What they did, was it right? For that time, they celebrated, but for them to try to put a slot in there and say, from now on, because this is where we got victory, this is where we're going to celebrate it, is wrong. Right. So I want to make sure we understand that once again, it's deeper than what we were taught and what we were made to believe. Right. Something they put into basically change that whole thing, but in all, it was still wrong. Right. For them to celebrate at that time, Yahuwah allowed it to be so that one time. But for it to be a commemoration all the time, no, because the feasts have a set time. Sure. This is why when you hear it in the scripture and it says, and the season, that season means moed, meaning the set times that we are to celebrate and commemorate the feasts. Right. Because when you look at the month of Nisan and you look at Abib is a season or a time, and it's spring. Abib means spring. Right. So we keep Peshat in the spring. We don't keep it in the winter. We don't keep it in the fall. We keep it in the month of Abib, which is the month or the time of spring. That's right. Fresh and new beginning. That's right. That's when we're supposed to keep it. So it's important that we understand. And once again, I want to make sure that we understand what's taking place here. They try to, you got so many people at this time putting things in place. You have to understand, we have to be a zealous people, but we have to be an obedient people. And because they won the victory, this is what they were doing. They were doing a second Sukkot. But at the same time, it was not for them to try to change the time of Sukkot from its original time. Are you hearing me? And that's what they were trying to do. And then the others were coming in, and they were trying to use the dedication, and they were trying to say, well, it was because of the miraculous oil that lasted. So you got a whole lot of things that have been placed in here. But once again, we thank Abba Yahuwah for bringing clarity and insight into this so that we understand. It is not a time that we commemorate. Right. It is a time that we thank Him that has happened, right, and that our people were able to stand and continue to do what He called them to do, but we continue moving forward. That's right. That's right. Because you have to understand, when we put the Hanukkah up, that's when you start getting into the worship, to sun worship. That's right. So like I say, so this is what you call a traditional fruitcake. Right. There's all kinds of stuff in it. And you understand, once again, where these things take place and how we are not to commemorate and follow up behind it. Are you hearing me? Yes. Even in the dedication and even in Sukkot, making sure we follow it in its right time. That's right. And it is so. And it is so. Now, once again, this was one of the sins of Jeroboam that provoked Yahuwah. Jeroboam established his own feast just 1 month after Sukkot, while the Maccabees had their second Sukkot months and 10 days after the appointed time. This is why people can't do it whenever they want. We have to do it when? At its appointed time. Now, which had no scriptural precedent for them to do this. We certainly recognize that this was the time that they could actually perform a festival to Yahuwah. After being under the wicked control of the Greek, justified or not, it is very clear that the 8-day celebration was a substitute for the feast that they had missed. So once again, it's a substitute for what? The feast they had missed. Not a time for them to reestablish it. Not a time for us to say that this is the dedication, a rededication of lives, but a time that they were rededicating themselves because they had missed Sukkot, one of the most, I think, important times of feast that we're to celebrate. Atonement, trust me, I'm disregarding atonement, but that's one of the times that we are supposed to celebrate, and it is one of the times that men are to appear before Abba Yahuwah with an offering.
That's right. That's right.
So once again, it's important that we understand Torah of these things. So once again, to bring clarity to these things, it's important that we understand once again that what we have learned in the book of Maccabees during the Hasmonean dynasty that we use to collect or collaborate with Hanukkah is wrong.
That's right.
What they were celebrating was the second Sukkot that they had missed for 3 years. Also, it's important that we understand that because they did it, does not make it right to try to do it every year at that time. We're only to do it at the time that it is appointed. I've heard a lot of people that have celebrated in different times, but this is why we are supposed to know the set apart times.
Right.
The Moed times, the feasts, or the set times of Abba Yahuwah for us to commemorate and celebrate the feast. So once again, we have brought clarity to that. Now, as we look again at the Hanukkah, it was never mentioned anywhere in Scripture that there was an 8 or 9 lampstand that was created and miracle oil came forth. Once again, that came after the Babylonian captivity.
Right.
So it's important once again that we understand what was all steeped in it, what they did, and how, even being zealous, if you're not careful, you can turn around and cause a world of confusion.
That's right.
Are you hearing me?
Yeah.
Once again, I'm a firm believer, just because it's a good thing doesn't mean it's the right thing.
Right.
And just because you were allowed that one time doesn't mean that you're supposed to do it all the time.
Right.
And they got overzealous wanting to try to change it. So once again, it's important that we maintain that and that we understand we don't mess with his appointed times as we are supposed to celebrate the Moed, the feast.
Right.
Once again, I want to stop right here to give you time to chew on that and to consider what has been said, so that as you go back and pray and study even yourself the more, that you will see once again syncretism, and not only syncretism, but when you have 2 and 3 interpretation of things, this is what can happen. Once again, when the Ruach HaKodesh is involved and we all are listening and plugged in, guess what? We all gonna come up with the same thing. Even if we come up with different portions of it, it's still gonna come and make a perfect fit.
Right. That's right.
I ain't gonna have something. We ain't creating a puzzle, and in the puzzle may have the centerpiece. You may have the corner, and then somebody else comes with a balloon. Now that's totally. You ain't even in the picture. You don't even have a piece to help make up the puzzle.
Right. That's right.
So as far-fetched and funny as that may be, this is what has happened over the centuries and over the generations.
Right.
So it's important once again that we study to show ourselves approved unto Abba Yahuwah, a workman that need not be ashamed, rightly dividing the truth.
That's right.
Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And so once again, it's important that we hold fast and cling unto Abba Yahuwah, and that we be careful to adhere to his commandments, his judgments, and his testimony.
That's right.
Because in doing so, we will remember not to add and definitely do not take away,
That's right.
but to follow in the instructions that he has given unto us. Once again, I want to say unto you, I told on you for your attention and for your time as we continue to go through this, and continue to find those learning about this. There's so much more. And as I continue to pray and as he continues to speak to me and as he gives me, he willing, then we will come back and we will learn some more about it on Yom Shishi, that we may truly be well versed and learn and all the things that took place in this, because we have to understand there is so much more underneath this, and if not, then we will continue to proceed in our original teachings. But as he continues to give to me, and he continues to unfold to me the mysteries and the revelations of certain things, I will be sure, as he gives me, to give it to you. Yeah. Once again, I want to say to you, we love you, we appreciate you, we're praying for you, and I want you to know that I am Prophetess Sabrina Brown, also Moral 777, and I am the leader of Messengers of Yahuwah's Kingdom, of Brave Belief Ministries located in South Carolina. Once again, let this ruminate and let it absorb into your heart and mind. Once again, we have been, I won't say tricked, but we have been taught to believe that it is a simple, harmless time of feast, but that's not true. It is a combination of things that were thrown together. And once again, just because one person does it, doesn't make it right. I hear a lot of people say, you know, when you talk to them, you say, well, how you doing today? Oh, I'm blessed and highly favored. You have to understand, you are taking a phrase that was never intended for you. Number one, that was to Miriam, the mother of Yahusha, when the angel Gabriel came on her and gave her the salutation and told her what she was going to bring forth. Right. And unless that's you, you have no right to even let that come out of your mouth. But once again, we tend to take things out of ignorance. Miles Monroe made a profound statement. He said, "What purpose is not known, abuse is inevitable." That's right. We don't want to abuse the liberties that we have, that he's given unto us by operating in ignorance. So once again, I want to say to you, I love you. I appreciate you for giving me your ear. Once again, as he continues to give to me, I will continue to give to you. I am Prophetess Sabrina Brown, also Moral 777, and I am the leader of Messengers of Yahuwah's Kingdom, of Brave Belief Ministries located in South Carolina. I want you to remember here at Messengers of Yahuwah's Kingdom, of Brave Belief Ministries, this is the place where the Torah does the body good. Until next time, may Abba Yahuwah Baruch Atah and keep you in his shalom until we meet again. Also, I want you to be reminded that you've been touched by Champion TV, a place where the champions reside. And it is so.